high. Another guy that I think has a chance to be a high draft pick next year is Isaiah Foskey. There's a chance he could have snuck into the first round this year if he would have come out, if he would have tested well. I think probably late first, second round pick. Next year, it's not as deep of an edge class as this one was. With another year of production under his belt, again, assuming he stays healthy, this is a situation where, he's a guy that's gonna have a chance to be a very high pick. And I think he actually has a higher ceiling in the draft than Michael Mayer, not necessarily because he's a better or worse player. It's just the positional value. So a big year from Isaiah Foskey coupled with, him going out and putting up good numbers and from a testing standpoint. I mean, we saw Trayvon Walker go from would you say it's fair to say that Trayvon Walker's draft projection going into this offseason was similar to what maybe Foskey's would have been coming into this year's draft, like, late first, early second?
Yeah.
Then what happens? He goes to the combine and he blows it up.
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden he's the number one pick, and so Foskey can have way more production. And if he can test well, and the other thing too is a lot like Michael Mayer. Part of the reason Isaiah Foskey came back is he knows his game can and needs to get better, and especially an emphasis on being a better run defender and advancing his pass rushing moves. Isaiah had like two moves last year. He had the power move, and then he had the quick jab, and then outside move. He didn't really have a third move, and his second move wasn't even really used that much. He just was so much better than everyone he went against week after week after week that he was able to still put up big time numbers. And I was watching USC game the other night, Ryan, and there's, just his first sack comes off the edge, beats the kid off the edge with a speed, gets his inside arm, just rocks the kid back because he's super long. As he's driving the tackle back, he takes his right arm and swipes the ball out of Keaton Slovis's hands. There's going to be a lot of film like that on him next year. Tied for the nation lead in forced fumbles this year. And some of them were huge. The Cincinnati forced fumble was a game changer. Cincinnati's driving about to go up at least 20-0, maybe 24-0 ball game. Instead, they get the strip sack. Drew White picks it up, runs it back. Notre Dame punches it in, and all of a sudden a potential 24-0 game turns into a 17-7 game. That allowed Notre Dame to somewhat get back in the game for 5 minutes. But it was a big moment. You look at the Oklahoma State game. Cowboys are getting ready to put the game away in the fourth quarter, and he has that huge not strip sack. He ripped it out of a guy that was running, and it gives Notre Dame last bit of life. So I could see him, if he continues to grow as a player and test well, of being a potential top 10 pick next year. And we haven't seen a Notre Dame defensive end go in the first round. You and I were talking about this yesterday. Since Ronaldo Wynn, I think, is in either 98 or 99. It's been a long time. That's going to help Notre Dame on the recruiting trail a ton if Isaiah Foskey can be a high pick next year. Just like having Kyle Hamilton help them get Peyton Bone and a Don Schuler. They're already recruiting D-end well. If they can have a guy like Foskey break out and be a first-round pick, things could get really, really interesting moving forward.
Everybody out there. But like I was saying, for the defensive end position, we always talk about unteachables a ton from the scouting side of everything, right? So this is you can't teach 6'5", 260, that frame that I think, I put into an evaluation on him this morning that I think he could hold another 10 to 15 pounds easy. Like, he's a clean 260 pounds, long arms. We're talking 34, 35-inch arms, in my opinion, maybe somewhere in the Trevon Walker type of conversation. So this kid is a true 4-3 defensive end, hand in the dirt, let the shackles go, long arms, incredible body to work with. And then he is a really, really explosive player. Yeah. I'm not sure that I would say he's the most bendy player of all time, but he has got the first step and the explosiveness to really threaten the outside track. And that's going to leave you up for the ability to, like you said, he's got the stab rip right now working a little bit, but let's add a club rip. Let's add some inside moves. Let's add the counter game to the arsenal. It's evolving, right? I think the one thing that we need to remember with Isaiah Foskey is a lot of programs were recruiting him as a tight end coming out of high school, right, at De La Salle. So it wasn't even like he was this. I just did some research, Brian. Like, he was a 200-something recruit by most publications. Like, he wasn't a guy that was like this top 100.
Most people projected him to be a tight end. It was Clark Lee and Notre Dame are the ones that convinced him to play defense. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that when you combine all those unteachables with the improvement that he's had over the last couple of years, because I think one thing that people don't remember is that this was his first year as a starter, right? Like
Right.
he was a rotational player in 2020. I think he had like 4.5 sacks, 5 sacks,
Right.
somewhere in that ballpark as a part-time player. But this is still an evolving player. This is not a finished product, which I think if you're saying this past year, which I agree with, that after his 14.5 sack, 14.5 tackle for loss, 11 sack season, that he maybe could have went late first round or early second, which I agree with you. If you're talking about him projecting to take that next step, add moves to the arsenal, get even stronger, get even more explosive, then why can't he have an Aiden Hutchinson type of rise? Why can't he be a top 10 pick? I mean, the class is going to be a little different next year because there's going to be a couple quarterbacks at the top in theory.
That's going to be a key. It's going to be a better
Right.
quarterback barring injury. You've got 2 top 5 picks at quarterback most likely next year.
Right,
For sure.
right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, but even that kind of considered is you have Will Anderson from Alabama, who's a stud. Everybody knows about that. But why can't he be the second guy? Why can't he compete with Miles Murphy from Clemson to be the
Right.
defensive end off the board? Why can't
Right.
that conversation happen? I think it can. He has to take a step forward, obviously. But at worst, even if he stays the same, this kid's still a potential first round pick.
Right.
Like it just has too many tools that people are going to they're going to lose their minds over a little bit.
I think you brought up Aiden Hutchinson. As a freshman, he had 15 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. Sophomore, 10 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss. Good season. Got hurt last year in 2020. Only had 15 tackles in 3 games. And then this year he comes out and has 16.5 tackles for loss and 14 sacks in 14 games, and he becomes the number 2 overall pick. You talk about, Isaiah Foskey not being overly bendy. I'll be a little surprised if Isaiah Foskey's numbers don't match or surpass Aiden Hutchinson's in most athletic categories. That's just my opinion. And he's definitely going to be longer than Aiden Hutchinson. So correct. There's no reason with a big year he can't come out and be that. And the nice thing is he's going to have other guys around him to take some of that heat off, especially if a guy like Riley Mills can have a breakout. And, we've talked a little bit about him this weekend, you and I, and he's another guy that, is a potential breakout player. And if he breaks out, it takes a lot of that pressure off of Isaiah Foskey because he's